if Bitcoin is our assumption over the next 5 to 8 years is going to get to about $1 million, emotions will be sky high, both on the greed side and on the fear side. We aim to be like neutral, calm, chill voice in a sea of like emotional volatility and just.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Satsventure. I'm here with Bisher from Stormrake. He's joining us. He's helped Australians from all ages onboard into Bitcoin and crypto, and someone I thought I would bring onto the show to show us a little bit of the behind the scenes at Stormrake. It's a Bitcoin and crypto brokerage service, so looking forward to this chat, Bisher.
No, thank you for having me on, Joey. I'm in my office at the moment. So what I'd love to do, with your permission, of course, is show you the trading floor when I hop out for a second, just kind of show you operations and what these guys are getting up to. Hopefully not show any sensitive information. Maybe you can blur it, but this out here is the trading floor, the digs, where everybody's kind of going out, doing their thing. And then I come through and just, I come back into my own spot. So it's good. I
Oh,
get
very cool.
yeah, those guys are working really hard. We've got 34 employees here from Melbourne HQ in Queens Road in South Bank, and it's great to have a lot of people who come in really motivated and charged to deliver a great service and take care of like really hardworking Aussies who just want, they'll go about their day job, sparky, plumber, accountant, lawyer, and then they, engage with our brokerage team to give them good access to the markets.
It's a little bit different to what it used to be back in 2014, 2015, meeting in a dark alley trying to trade some Bitcoin. And so it's pretty cool to see that here in Australia now and out of Melbourne, which is sort of my home city. So now I'm looking forward to this chat.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking of dark alleys, Joey, I actually bought my first Bitcoin in a McDonald's car park on
Yeah,
Middleborough
that's
Road,
wild.
Blackburn South.
Well, that can probably be part of your little introduction personal journey. But yeah, like, can you share to the audience what is your personal journey to how you got interested in Bitcoin? Maybe you mentioned the first time you purchased Bitcoin, and then how did you pivot from being a foreign exchange broker to now finding yourself in a leading role at Stormrake?
Yeah, it's a great set of questions. I was initially, as you mentioned, a foreign exchange broker. That was my introduction to financial markets. So I was dealing in primarily Aussie dollar, US dollar, and Japanese yen. So those were the focuses that I was looking at. I loved volatility. From a very young age, I got interested in leverage trading, margin trading. I thought, look, I want to be wealthy. I want to be successful. What's the quick way to do it? And then all of these online gurus and YouTube videos were telling you trade FX. And back then, crypto wasn't as prominent as it was then. So that's kind of what I fell into when I was 20, 21. That's going back about a decade now. I was just continuously donating money to the markets. So I'd work my honest day job at Grilled. So yes, former Grilled employee. And then I'd put half my wages into my rental expense and living expenses and whatnot, and the other half into my trading account and continuously dust it. And I said, there's got to be a better way that I can actually, make some money from this, markets. So I thought, who's looking really flash? My broker is looking really flash. Why don't I go and learn what they're doing at the brokerage firm? So I knocked on a few doors, got my foot in the door in the brokerage industry as an FX broker. My transition to crypto, particularly Bitcoin, I just want to kind of delineate that I think that there's Bitcoin, which is sound money, and then there's crypto, which is alternative investments. I'd call them 24/7 tech stocks is the way I look at them. So there's a bit of a delineation there and a bit of a separation. But I first got introduced to Bitcoin in 2015. My initial assumption being an FX broker was that it needs to be dismissed, because how can you have real currency or real money when it's not issued and backed and managed by a nation state or something like that? I that It's funny because I've come like completely 180 since then, and I kind of picked at that rabbit hole over time. There was one guy who introduced me to it, and he introduced it to me, and he was just a really cool cat. Like he was just like typical Bitcoin bro, just like lift weights, eat steaks, get more dates, and just a cool character. And I was like, I just want to hang out with him because he's a chill dude, and we can drink beers and just chat. And I kept picking his brain on Bitcoin, so I thought, why not actually buy some? So I went on the Bitcoin Talk forums and linked up with people who were doing peer-to-peer trading, mainly with paper wallets for cash transactions. So I bought my first Bitcoin, well, first couple of Bitcoins back in 2016 at the McDonald's car park on Middleborough Road in Blackburn South. So I met up with the guy, said, mate, here's 3 Gs, and I walked away with 3 Bitcoin, mate. Can you believe that? That was awesome. I wish I could get those prices again. And people are like worried about the most recent pullback, and it's nothing. So yeah, for me, it just kind of evolved and matured, and then I started working in the industry as a crypto broker in 2019. That was because I wanted to be more aligned with my investments because I was just fully allocated from 2016 to 2019. After the 2018 blow off top, I went down that rabbit hole hardcore, and so I transitioned to work in the industry, and I ended up at Stormrake as employee number one back in 2022. And then I bought into the business at the end of that year. So 6 months later, I bought in. I was fully invested in Stormrake as a business unit, and I wanted to see it become the best and most successful brokerage in the country. And I'd like to say 3 years later, we're pretty much there.
What do you think like drove the rise of Stormrake in this competitive space now? Like there's alternative brokerage services, exchanges, all sorts of Bitcoin onboarding apps and sort of programs. What do you think Stormrake sort of breaks out as something special, as something that can rise to the top?
Yeah, it's pretty simple and it's just old school service. A lot of like products, apps, platforms, they have fantastic technology, and I'm not here to take anything away from Aussie crypto exchanges. They do a bang up job, and they've onboarded a lot of Aussies into Bitcoin. But we just provide a really simple service that your father, your grandfather may have used to access the stock market. We make it a little bit more accessible for institutions, family offices, high net worth, even baby boomers, self-managed super fund managed retirees to actually get into this space without having to have like this really broad depth of technical expertise. All they have to do is send an email or pick up the phone and give us a call. And for that, that makes the barrier to entry really low. So I think that's one of the biggest differentiators. And number two is education. We're constantly, outreaching to our clients. I did just, I think 2 nights ago, a monthly webinar to our clients where we did an information session as a wrap up for the month of October and what we're anticipating for November, whilst we try to stay clear of like making heavy price predictions all the time and being moon boys and everything. It's really important that we provide good service and good education so that our clients can make informed decisions and they know how to execute without having to worry about the depth of an order book or how to put on a limit order or how to hit the market order and how to put it to cold storage. We take all of that out for them, and it makes it really easy for somebody to go from, okay, I'm interested in Bitcoin to, yep, I've learned about it to time to execute. They can have that in one phone call with their broker and allocate, say, $10,000 AUD into Bitcoin by the end of the chat. And that's why I think we've been so successful over the years.
Your services can actually provide a better spot price, which can actually now the 2% spread can be a bit more reasonable. So could you maybe go into what those spot prices are difference on exchanges and how they're actually getting, I guess, more hidden fees through that spot price?
Yeah, great. So what we're referring to with the spot price, and if I just have a quick squeeze at where we are now, the market is at 149,400 Aussie dollars. That's the current spot market price, and that's pretty universal across different exchanges and brokerage firms. However, what a lot of exchanges do is they bake in a little cheeky spread. What a spread is, it's a markup over the spot price between the buy and the sell. So, for example, a buy price on a pretty well-known Aussie exchange is $152,000 at the moment, whereas you can buy it from me at $149,300. So there is a difference there, but the spot price is the same across all exchanges. Some of them charge a markup, and some of them charge a spread, which is the distance between the where people are willing to buy and where people are willing to sell, right? And so that way people can oftentimes have to cross the spread to go there. So your buyers have to buy above the market price and your sellers have to sell below the market price. And the difference either goes to a market maker or to an exchange. Whereas with Stormrake, there's no spread. You just get the spot price, right? You don't have to cross any spreads. We actually give you the best price available in the market because that's not our model. We don't eat off spreads. We don't eat off markups or slippage. Where we make our earnings is on a transparent commission fee. So, and what I always encourage my clients is, yeah, you can look at the dollar fee for the services rendered, but look at how much Bitcoin you walked away with, right? So put $5,000 into your favorite local exchange, put $5,000 to Stormrake, say, and then push the buy button and then give us the order to buy and see where you end up with more Bitcoin. It's really simple. Don't worry about the fees. Where did you end up with the more BTC? Or when you go to sell, if you ever choose to sell for whatever reason, um, when you hit the sell button, are you ending up with more Aussie dollars or less Aussie dollars going through us on a $5,000 parcel? So it's really easy to compare and make sure what I'm saying is not only makes sense, but is actually factual.
Yeah, I love that your service is actually looking at 20 different exchanges, trying to get the best
Mm.
price, constantly trying to buy it at the lowest price possible. Whereas in exchange, it's just a set amount and they've chucked that little bit of gravy on top. So, yeah, no, I love that your service can provide that, even with the 2% fee, that people can actually get more Satoshis for less.
Yes.
And I just wanted to pivot. What sort of customers are you seeing come to Stormrake? You've got Australians coming to you. What sort of age are they? What situations are they in? Are they going into retirement? Are they just in their 40s, 50s? Are they degenerate traders and gamblers, or are they looking to store value and build a new savings account?
Yeah, we couldn't be a worse service for degenerate traders and gamblers. We couldn't it's just not us, right? There's pumped up fun. There's all kinds of garbage meme coin casinos that you can access through a web wallet. That's not us. So our client demographic is two main personas, if you will. It's the over 55s who are either heading into retirement or have had a nice property portfolio, nice stock portfolio, and they want to get some exposure to digital assets and they want a real handheld white glove experience. And we cater to that very well. And then the other category is the busy professional, over 35 to 55 years of age. They've got a family, they've got a business, they're employed, they're waking up at 5 a.m. to make it to the job site at 5:30. By the time Smoko rolls around at 10:30, they haven't had the chance to even look at the markets. But on Smoko, they can give us a call and say, mate, chuck 20 G's into Bitcoin for me. They finish their durry and then they get back to work and it's all good. So that would be the two demographics we're taking care of at the moment.
Yeah, how can you advocate Bitcoin as a superior savings account to something just like a basic Aussie bank, one of the big four banks? People just chuck their money in there, a little bit of interest, maybe 2%, 3% a year, and people seem to be happy with that. Why are you seeing people want to make that pivot into Bitcoin as a savings account? And how can you advocate it as a store of value and savings account compared to, say, the banks?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll step out the investment thesis in a minute, and I'll also go out through, understanding its relative and much larger outperformance compared to your commercial bank savings account. But there's something really important that I want to highlight pertaining towards Australian commercial bank accounts. Not a lot of people know this, so it's a really important topic to raise. When you deposit your hard-earned funds, Joey, into a commercial bank, you become what is known as an unsecured creditor. Okay. And what that means is that if the bank was to ever go insolvent, they would pay out equity holders first, bond or secured debt holders second, and then yourself last, right? And when you enter into the commercial banking system and you deposit funds and you become an unsecured creditor, they can take your funds and lend it out through something known as fractional reserve banking. So if you put $100,000 into the bank, not only are you at risk of losing that $100,000 through no fault of your own, but you also have that funds lent out 10 times over without having those funds on hand in the first place. What I mean by that is that because capital deposit requirements in Australia are 10%, if you put $100,000 in the bank and then next guy comes in, let's call him Joey as well. Joey number two decides to come through and get a $1 million home. He wants to get his foot on the property ladder. Okay. They lend out your deposit and create interest, create a loan for $900,000 out of thin air. Out of thin air. It didn't exist before. That's currency creation. 97% of currency printing occurs at the commercial bank level, right? Between these loan and credit facilities, credit creation, credit cards, mortgage loans, all that kind of stuff, car loans. So when that credit comes in, not only are you having to pay interest on things that was created out of thin air, it just completely destroys the value, relative value of the remaining currency pool, right? So that's why your savings account is broken. So let's say you work really hard and you've saved $10,000, but the bank, the commercial bank, can print $1 million out of thin air. Thin air, guys, thin air doesn't exist, right? When that happens, your share of the overall pie of Aussie dollars gets diluted in something known as inflation. And so your purchasing power erodes over time. Now, with Bitcoin, you get the opposite. You've got 21 million Bitcoin, that is the maximum supply, approximately 19.8 million of them circulating now, of course, not counting the ones that have been lost or you can't recover because the private keys have just been lost, misplaced, or forgotten. Now, in that environment, everybody's bidding on the same 21 million Bitcoins. Now, yes, there's short-term volatility, price increases, price decreases. But if we have a look right now, for example, Bitcoin has been pulling back as of late, no doubt. And so people will point and say, oh, well, from a performance perspective, if I bought it a month ago, I'm down 13%. And if I bought it 3 months ago, I'm down 17%, right? And that's a fair comment. That is the truth of the market performance. However, you got to zoom out. You got to have a time preference that is better suited towards a long-term outlook. Because if you look at this stuff day to day, you're going to see a lot of volatility because that's naturally what you see. And I run a brokerage firm, so I obviously have to be quite sensitive of price and aware of price so that I can get good value for my clients when they execute. But for most folk, if Bitcoin is our assumption over the next 5 to 8 years is going to get to about $1 million US, right, in equivalent purchasing power today, because the nominal amount might be 1 million, but the purchasing power would be a lot less in the future as we've stepped that out. And so for me, Bitcoin is a superior savings technology for two reasons. One, which is what I mentioned before, it cannot be seized, stolen, misappropriated, rehypothecated. None of it can be taken from you in that sense, right? And then number two, you cannot have it diluted, right? In terms of your share. So if you own 1, 2, 3 Bitcoins, there's never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoins. So your ownership, your percentage of ownership will always, of the total supply will always stay fixed. And I think that's a very powerful thing to allow you to preserve your purchasing power without having to rely on commercial banks that would otherwise be looking to do things like fractional reserve lending and banking.
With this recent correction, do you feel like your clients, sentiment wise and confidence wise, do you think it's going up, or are they panicking as soon as there's a drop? Like, are you seeing complete panic as soon as there's a correction, or do you feel like your clients are slowly learning to understand Bitcoin, build more conviction, and actually prepare for the long term?
Yeah, so from my side, it's a great question. It is a constant education that we have to put into our clients to teach them about the long-term value of Bitcoin. Of course, emotions are always going to be heightened, particularly with a brokerage service, for example, because with clients who are trying to trade on exchanges or platforms like Binance and Kraken and Coinbase, these huge behemoths, right? There's nobody that you can pick up the phone to when the market's stressing you out to then have a vent with. Whereas with us, I've got a team of 34 employees who come in here every day ready to serve our clients, right? So that for me is pretty powerful and pretty magical because I know that our clients will get taken care of. And I know that as difficult as the market can be, and it can be volatile and emotions will be sky high, both on the greed side and on the fear side, we aim to be like neutral, calm, chill voice in a sea of like emotional volatility and just cut through the fat. I had a client who bought nearly $500,000 worth of Bitcoin with me, pretty much around 120,000 US, right? So just as we were coming up into 126. So spent a few days in profit, and then the market has obviously, as we know, has gone down, gone down, gone down, and we're now trading at around 97, 98K, which caused me a bit of a panic. Bish, you're the man. I want to have a chat with you. What do I do? Right? I think I'm going to sell it all. I said, cool. If you want to sell, sell. I've got no problems. But there's actually three options in front of you. I'd say make yourself a cup of tea, have some biscuits. By the time you come back and you want to make a decision of what I'm about to tell you, you'll be a lot better placed and you'll be happier for making it. Number one, now's the time to be a buyer. Deploy some dollar cost averaging. Be conservative with your capital because there might be some more volatility to come. But the easiest way to overcome that and not to try to time the market is just deploy a weekly, monthly, quarterly, daily dollar cost averaging with Stormrake. You can do that easily. So Joey, you can say, Bish, I'm sending you $10,000. I'll say, comprende, how do you want it allocated? and you go to me, what kind of dollar cost averaging strategies do you recommend, for example? And I'd say, you've got $10,000 with me, Joey. Let's do $2,000 a week for the next 5 weeks and get you the best possible price over that time. What do you say? You might, I like it, Bish, but make it $1,000 over 10 weeks, for example, right? And that's perfectly fine too. So start dollar cost averaging. Number two, when you're feeling heightened emotions and you're speaking to your broker, people often want to sell. Now, okay, sell, 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 buy, 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 sell, 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 buy, 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 buy at the high, sell, sell, sell at the low. And that's a really terrible way to get chopped up and lose value and pay me nothing but exorbitant fees. And then number three is actually an option that people have to be happy with is do nothing, hold, right? Or as we call it, hodl, right? And so I think it's important that people understand those three options. Whenever the market gets frothy to the upside or the downside, and there's lots of greed and lots of fear, what is it that you're trying to do here? Are you trying to preserve your purchasing power, get off the central banks, get off the commercial banks, and be free to travel and move your funds as you see fit? Great, hold the Bitcoin. Do you need some short-term liquidity for a family holiday or a new car? The reason why I say this is that I'm all in on Bitcoin, Joey. I'm all in. I don't have anything. I don't have Aussie dollars, probably 300 bucks in Aussie, right? And so for me, what it boils down to is that if I need to get liquidity, I sell down a little bit and I get it, right? And so for me, it's just like I try to keep investing with us as rational as possible so that our clients aren't making really rash emotional decisions.
Yeah, anyone that I introduce into Bitcoin and they're gaining interest, they're gaining conviction, maybe they're doing some potties, reading some books. I say, if this was to drop 50% over the next 3 months, would you be able to handle that? And if they go, no, I can't handle that, then it's almost like, well, you don't know what's around the corner. So maybe this isn't something for you, because volatility to me is life in an asset and actually an
Mm,
opportunity. Whereas for a lot of people, that just scares them away. They don't see
mm,
volatility in their banks. They don't know about inflation, which I would argue is some volatility in the Aussie dollar. And then they see the S&P 500 7%, 10% a year. They think that's pretty stable. And so this new asset comes where it can have these pretty violent drops and also rides to the upside. It can scare a lot of people away. And so, yeah, I just for advice, I'd say that's very good advice. Where it's you've got those three options.
absolutely.
Now, part of your brokerage service isn't just Bitcoin; it's crypto. And so, how do you guide your clients in portfolio diversification and risk regarding spot Bitcoin compared to treasury companies, leverage trading, altcoins?
It's a great question, man. So really what it boils down to, Joey, is whilst we do provide access to crypto markets, particularly things like USDT, USDC, Ethereum, Solana, Hyperliquid, like the big layer ones, there's not a lot out there that actually interests us as a firm and not a lot that we position our clients. So in terms of what we get our clients into, it's almost 80 to 90% Bitcoin, 10 to 20% alts to give us some further potential upside return, but you have to accept that with greater potential for return, there's also a much higher risk profile when it comes to making these investments. So we always caution our clients when it comes to buying Bitcoin treasury companies. For example, MicroStrategy is now trading below its net asset value, so the company is worth less than the Bitcoin that it's holding, providing actually a really good arbitrage opportunity for those who are interested in it. So that's cool too. But that's a completely different approach to just buying and holding Bitcoin in cold storage. You're now becoming, a professional financial markets trader, and you're measuring NAV, and you're doing all these kind of arbitrage trades with, sometimes with options, sometimes with futures, sometimes with cash and carries. So there's all kinds of things that you can do, but it just overcomplicates what I think is the ultimate cheat code to wealth, which is you buy Bitcoin with Stormrake every day, every week, every month at an interval that suits you best, and then you put that Bitcoin into cold storage and you become financial Superman.
Yeah, I just see Bitcoin as savings, and then I see everything else as an investment or speculation. Like that's kind of
Mm,
how I separate the two. Like I save in Bitcoin, and if I want to take a bit of risk, maybe that's 5%, 10%. That's where I put my MicroStrategy. That's where I put my previously altcoins, but I've moved on from there.
yeah.
A lot of people talk about, now I'm not sure if you can give financial advice on this, but a lot of people talk about an altcoin season around the corner. Do you think 2026 could be bullish not only for potentially Bitcoin with maybe riding off the back of gold, but do you think there's still a world where crypto as a whole like does really well all at once, or do you think there's going to be just the select winners and potentially 90% losers?
I would say the latter, my dear friend, but with a lot higher loser profile. I'm talking 99.99% loser profile, right? Because altcoins and meme coins are ultimately just very extractive. The illusion of alts, I think, has been thoroughly shattered over this last 2 year period, which could be argued as one of the most um, exciting bull runs, maybe not from a price action perspective, but certainly from an adoption, institutional interest, new products coming online such as the ETFs, like that is a massive, massive interest. And so for me, I just naturally tend to, and I lean my clients towards a Bitcoin only portfolio. For those who are particularly aggressive, maybe a bit younger, and they just want to see some supercharged returns, I'm happy to get them into some alternative coins, some altcoins. But for 99% of my investors, they'll be far better off just buying and holding Bitcoin and then going home to their loved ones and doing what they do best as their day job.
What do you think will happen like 2026? You know, not necessarily like a price speculation, but we see gold break all-time highs, absorb like what, 5 or 6 Bitcoins or something into its market cap in 1 year.
Yep.
Do you think that is a sign that Bitcoin could be ready to run just as a speculation, or do you think gold's doing its own thing and Bitcoin's just in a completely different market at this point?
I mean, it's in a completely different market at this point. Gold is gold and Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and I've never been a big fan of the digital gold analogy. Gold is fantastic and has been money for 5,000 years. It's why I like a gold ring and gold watch. Gold is good. Like I think people oftentimes become quite tribal with their investments. I'm not tribal about Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. Majority of my wealth is in Bitcoin, but I do like other investments. And so gold is on its doing its own thing. It's been time tested as that when inflation runs and trust in fiat currency dies, where do people go to? Gold and more recently silver. Bitcoin will have its time in the sun as well. I'm not worried too much about the short term price action and fluctuations and day to day. I remain eagerly and cautiously optimistic because I anticipate more upside. I know people will say, oh, well, you're always bullish. Well, yeah, I've been bullish from 1,000 to 600, 600 to 30K, 30K up to 60, 60 down to 15, and then the 15K run all the way up to 74, 74 back to 50, Joey, 50 up to 108, 108 to 74, 74, now more recently to 126, and now trading at 97. So for me, I just feel comfortable with the volatility. I want people to get comfortable with it too, because that's where the opportunity lies. But also, there's so much upside in Bitcoin, you don't need to chase alternatives.
I feel like it's just gold to me is just almost like the older generation waking up to the fiat currency just getting absolutely obliterated. They're going, my
Mhm.
savings account's not working, inflation's running, everything's getting more expensive, and it seems like no one can tell me why. I'm just going to go back to gold. I'm going to go back to what I think works as a store of
Yeah,
value. And
I
so I
agree.
think, yeah, I agree. Like Bitcoin will have its time. Maybe that's not next year, but it could be quite interesting as the money printer continues to come on. They're talking about stimulus checks over in the US, which we saw previously in COVID, that caused a massive run up for Bitcoin and even crypto as a whole. And so, yeah, I would say 2026, it's really like speculation at this point. I think it can go either way. People are arguing for the 4 year cycle coming to an end. Others are saying, no, we're going to have a huge bull run. Do you know what sort of camp you sit on in the sense of a 4 year cycle? Do you think something like that is still relevant to today?
Yeah, look, I've never been a big fan of the 4 year cycle in the first place because of how small of a sample size it is. There's literally three counts of cycles, three, and people are extrapolating that this is how it's going to be forever. So it's not. I don't think it's analogous. I think it's good to provide like a general framework. And so far, those who believe in the 4 year cycle are actually nailing it, right? Because everybody who sold in October based off the last cycle high, being 4 years later, they've actually done quite well. So far, they've been proven correct. So for me, I think that what actually influences Bitcoin's price outside of just like 4 year cycles is liquidity. We're talking about things like interest rates. We're talking about things like the ability for it to be stored and held in custodial ETFs, which is not my biggest fan. I'm not a big fan of those kind of products, but the accessibility of it grows. So that's what I'm interested in, and I think that has a much bigger knock-on effect to Bitcoin than an arbitrary 4-year Bitcoin halving cycle. It does play a role, but I don't think it's like what you can stake your reputation on. But for me, I think that in 2026, look, Joey, I'm the worst person to ask because I'm always bullish. Always. I always expect more upside, right? And I'm never thinking about, okay, I'm buying more Bitcoin. I think it's going to go down tomorrow or next week or next month. I'm not trying to day trade it like that. I just know that when I'm 31 now, by the time I'm 40, my Bitcoin is probably going to be around somewhere around $1 million. So if I've got 21 Bitcoin, for example, I'll have $21 million. That's not a bad position to be in when you're 39, 40, unencumbered with any debt or any kind of, mortgage or anything. That's a really good position to be in, and that's what I'd like to get my clients into as well.
Yeah, speaking of debt and mortgages, we're seeing 5% roll out for deposits here in Australia. So it's going to encourage a lot of young people to get into the market. They can finally afford a house.
Mm-hmm.
And then this sort of ties into what the US is doing, encouraging a 50-year mortgage, which is like insanity. You're just paying off that house to the day you die. Could you maybe speak into, I know that your clients are on an older base here in Australia, but for Gen Z, for millennials that are looking at buying property, thinking it's the all-time Aussie investment, they're a little bit late to the party, but property's just going to go up forever, and it seems to be doing pretty good. Could you maybe suggest why Bitcoin could be an alternative? Maybe you could put your deposit into Bitcoin or a portion of the deposit, or maybe this new idea of actually maybe rent is superior in a time like this where you can allow yourself to invest in alternatives like Bitcoin.
Well, anything I'm about to say here is obviously one, not financial advice, and two, will be colored with my own bias. Because, for example, I'm a rent investor. I rent where I live, and we live in a nice part of Melbourne, really nice family area for myself and my wife, my 2 kids. No problems there. And I'd be happy to continue renting because it allows me to do two things: be unencumbered with mortgage debt and stress, and be subject to central bank interest rates. So I don't have any interest in playing ball with that. And then number two, for me, in terms of why it's far superior, I just think that you don't need debt to get ahead, especially when you've got Bitcoin that has a compound average annual growth rate at, say, 25% over the next 10 years. You could just do better by focusing on your day job, your craft, whatever you do to produce an income, whether it be something you do for yourself or you work for someone else. You take that excess income and you turn it into assets. That is the safest strategy and quickest way to success and wealth, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, well, I'll speak for young people. Like I'm 21 and I have to make a decision. Do I put a house deposit down as soon as possible? And then your number one goal honestly just becomes trying to pay off that mortgage. Like that's just sort of
Yeah,
what I'm hearing. As soon as you get that mortgage, it's your number one goal to pay it off as fast as possible, reduce interest by paying it off faster, trying to play games where you can bring that interest down. Whereas now we're seeing this alternative game for young people where it's like if you can just put your deposit or a percentage of your deposit and save in Bitcoin and then find a rental space, or maybe you stay at your parents for longer, or these things that I think Australians have typically probably looked down on, where it's like you're stalling, like they're saying, oh, you got to move out of your parents' house as soon as possible, or you got to go find and buy a house as soon as possible, like an anti rent mentality. Now we've got
yeah,
Bitcoin come into the space where it's like, I feel like I'm setting myself up for an asymmetric bet here. Like me and my wife are just saving in Bitcoin and we both contribute with our pay slips and putting away as much as possible. And we're preparing for, in the short term, 5 to 10 years, where I think that could be a really good play. But even beyond that, like I'm 21, but I'm looking at superannuation and I'm trying to get a self-managed super fund on the go with my small little stack from a few years of full time. And that's just not been an option like until now. I'd almost say Bitcoin's been legitimized in that sense in Australia. And that sort of pivots into my next question about superannuation. Like, is Stormrake in the business of helping people on board with superannuation? And how could you advocate for something like a self-managed super fund?
super easy. I mean, we've got nearly 1,000 SMSF clients who use Stormrake services, which is awesome. We've played a role in our Australian, our retirees' life savings, and not necessarily that they're all putting it into Bitcoin, but certainly a nice chunk of it. And then they're going to continue to live off that quite handsomely without having to rely on third parties or central banks or commercial banks or even an investment bank or a stockbroker to deliver them good returns. They can just rely on Bitcoin. Now, I know people think, how can you rely on Bitcoin? It's so volatile, it's down recently. I'm like, well, you've got a very myopic view, because whether you look at year, 3 years, 5 years, Bitcoin has done astonishingly well. Yes, there's volatility along the way, but for us, self-managed super fund clients absolutely adore and love our service. And I encourage anybody, no matter how small your SMSF balance is, to get in contact with us so we can be of service to you.
Yeah, I think the average of, a superannuation in Australia is returning 7 to 9% or something like that, trying to invest in
Yeah.
their own chosen things. They're sort of, in some sense, pumping their own bags because I'm sure they've got deals with
Hmm,
who they're investing with. And so
absolutely.
the idea of self-managed super fund being able to actually, really take your capital into your own hands, deploy it into Bitcoin, and hold for the long term is, a really cool idea. And I think it's cool to be able to bring your superannuation into your own hands, lock it up. And something that I was thinking about the other day is if you were able to, put Bitcoin into a self-managed super fund, pull it into a self-custody setup, which is completely legal here in Australia. You can do that with your self-managed super fund. They can help you with that. Um, and even if worst case scenario, the people that you were helping on board went bankrupt or something really bad happened, you would still have the capital. Like you're not liable to just automatically give up your funds. And so yeah, it's a really cool idea with the self custody, self managed super fund, and combining the two.
Yeah,
Just
agreed.
could you maybe just speak into a little bit of self custody versus say holding with someone like Stormrake?
It's a good question. I mean, it comes down to what I call people's comfort and knowledge level. When you're getting started, your level of knowledge and your comfort in self-custody will be very low. So you'll naturally use Stormrake's institutional custody. As you learn more about the space, as you learn more about Stormrake, about self-custody, as you learn more about how to keep your private keys safe and secure, the biggest beginner question that tells me somebody's not quite ready for cold storage yet is they say, what type of cold storage device do you use? That's the most common, frequently asked beginner question, because they think that the device itself is where the security comes from. The security comes from the SHA-256 algorithm and the 24-word C phrase. That's where your encryption and where your actual private keys are actually keeping the assets safe. That for me is far more important to understand. How do I generate and store my private keys so that they're safe, offline, and secure? That's far more important than just buying a Trezor or a Ledger because you heard some guy online say to do so. Do some research, find a device that's pretty interchangeable, and then make sure that you've got good private key management. Until you have that, you can use Stormrake's custodial solution. Once you've got good private key management and processes in place, then you can withdraw at any stage, and I think you'd be feeling comfortable to withdraw.
So you're using self custody sort of as your savings account. You've got self custody Bitcoin, and it sounds like you also have a hot wallet that you're able to travel the world and spend your Bitcoin, use your Bitcoin. Could you maybe go into how you've done that previously?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I went through this whole process in Thailand recently, and in over the Easter break. So I got a letter from one of the big four banks saying we no longer wish to serve you. You've been effectively debanked. You can't access your cards. If I was a just a pure fiat guy, I'd be up shit creek without a paddle. Now, what ended up happening is I had Bitcoin in my hot wallet. I went down to downtown Patong, which is like the heart of Phuket in Thailand, exchanged exactly 0.03 of a Bitcoin for 90,000 Thai baht, which is equivalent of about 4,000 Aussie dollars. Here's the kicker, my friend. Over there, everything's so cheap. I went to, for example, the Similan Islands with my wife and my two kids. The whole thing was 4,000 Thai baht for like pickup and transfers and food and everything. So it was insane. So we had a great trip with no issues, thanks to Bitcoin being a globally recognized 24/7 liquid monetary asset. It really saved my family holiday, and I used it as my everyday account as well. Whether I'm spending in kind at the Fox Hotel in Collingwood, they've got accepting Bitcoin payments, which is cool. Or number two, when I go through the whole process of liquidating a portion of the Bitcoin that I'm holding to put it into Aussie dollars.
Why should merchants in Australia in the long term start accepting Bitcoin as money? Maybe just go into a little bit of the instant settlement and a little bit of, that aspect of Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, not only is there instant settlement, not only do you not have to rely on a central bank, but you can actually have true peer-to-peer electronic cash settlements. Why that's important? All central banks and commercial banks are currently trying to phase out commercial banks centers and ATMs from across the country because we're going cashless. Why I'm not a fan of this is that there needs to be a level of privacy and security in terms of your day-to-day transactions. And I think that the Bitcoin Lightning Network does that incredibly well. And so for me, I'm incredibly bullish on Lightning Network solutions because it will give us the scale that we need to use. And there's a lot more privacy and discretion as to how you can keep those assets safe when you're using a Bitcoin Lightning wallet.
How are Australians that are saving in Bitcoin? So, sorry that I keep going back to saving in Bitcoin, but I think it's just a really cool idea. How is their life ultimately getting cheaper as time goes on, as their bag is getting bigger? Everything is getting priced in Bitcoin, and it seems to be everything's getting cheaper. Whereas if you're living in a fiat system, in a savings system, everything's getting more expensive. What is the two comparison there?
Well, I mean, you've nailed it on the head. And the great analogy is the shopping trolley in terms of how much US dollars, or in our case, Aussie dollars, used to get you in 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2025. And it's the same $100 Aussie bill, right? And you can see that $100 there, and it shows you a full shopping cart in 2016 or 2012, a semi-full in 2016, a half full in 2020, and then near empty in 2025 because your purchasing power gets you less and less goods, right? Whereas with Bitcoin, you start with a small trolley, you end up with a massive trolley filled to the brim, which is your cost of goods goes down relative to your Bitcoin amount because of just scarcity economics 101.
Alrighty, mate. Well, we'll begin to wrap it up. I just wanted to give you the floor to maybe share some advice for Gen Z. As Gen Z is coming up, people are very pessimistic about the future. People are starting to lose hope when it comes to financial freedom in the sense of owning assets, building on assets, and setting up maybe an early retirement seems to be
Mm.
dwindling. And so, yeah, maybe just give some advice to Gen Z, and then we can start to plug where people can find you.
Yeah, I mean, really simply, all our responsibility here is to take care of our clients, give them safe, reliable execution. You can find us at stormrake.com. You can call us on the number that's on the website. You can drop us emails at trade@stormrake.com, or if you just want general insights, you've got info@stormrake.com, and we take care of you that way. So for us, it's just a really simple phone-based or email-based service. We want you to have somebody dedicated within my business. Is why I have 34 employees on the trading floor right now, so that when push comes to shove and you just need an answer, just give these guys a call. They're trained professionals. They want to take care of your business. So for us, it's just really accessible. Stormrake.com, send us an email, give us a phone call. We're there to take care of you from start to finish. And in terms of what advice I can give to Gen Z in general, is look after your health, guys. Honestly, it's super important, right? All the finances, your wealth, your asset investing. You're young, so you've got the ability to work really hard and produce an income. You put that hard work, that hard-earned income into assets like Bitcoin as your savings. Joey's been very clear about that. Bitcoin as savings is actually a technology. It's a savings technology which we should all be using. So you work hard, you produce your income, and take care of your health, and you buy assets. And it's a really positive feedback loop for young men and women to build up and develop. So you work out, you feel good, you eat well, and then it gives you energy to do good, honest work. That good, honest work produces you income that allows you to buy assets. Those assets gives you more time to be able to take care of your health, and then it just goes round and round and round and round, and you just feel good, you feel pumped, you're healthy, you just feel like $1 million, and then you're making good money. Plus, you've got assets. That's the magic formula, in my opinion.
Well, it's been an awesome conversation. Appreciate that last bit of advice. And maybe one day we'll go to the Fox Hotel and grab a beer. It's only an hour away from where I am. So, no, I appreciate you coming on. This has been an awesome conversation. And I encourage everyone to go look into Stormrake and see whether the services are good for them. So, no, I appreciate this conversation, mate.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Bisher. Bye.